12 and kindergarten class size? We're in here. Hi. We have this is an unusual thing. We are starting promptly at 6 o'clock because we have a very full agenda. So we want to make sure to maximize our time. Some of you have been to academic standards meetings before, and we have a little bit of a casual approach to this. There's a lot of exchange of conversation, but tonight, because our meeting is very full, the agenda and presentations could be lengthy, we really want to try to wait to pull the public comment until the end. And because many of you are new and new faces, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Denise Brooks. I'm one of the 9 members of the school board and chair of the Academic Standards Committee. And just so you have the context, can the other board members just all introduce themselves?
Jerry Rupp.
Bill Foster.
Andy Block, President.
Wendy Thomas.
Patty Sexton.
Great. So we have a bunch of people from the administration who are going to start getting involved in the presentation and introduce themselves. But why don't I just let Dr. Fraser welcome you as well.
Sure. Thanks so much for being here, certainly to our board and members of the public as well. We have 2 critically important topics here this evening, and starting with the elementary class size review, both the practices, policies, processes, etc., as well as then moving into full-day kindergarten. So topics of import, I think, at any given time, but especially where we're at as a school district right now, especially important. So Mr. Joe McClay up there at the head of the table. Joe, if you give a wave. Joe is our new Director of Elementary Education, so he has the unenviable task of delivering these 2 presentations as his first 2 presentations here at Academic Standards. So we certainly appreciate the time that he's invested here this evening, and then across the table from him is Mr. Barry Desko, our Director of Secondary Education, and he's certainly been involved the whole length of this process as well. So we're excited to be able to present this information this evening, and Denise is the chairperson of the committee. So as questions come up, as comments come up, it might be best to sort of just jot some of those down and hang on to those, because as Mr. McClay works through the presentations, he might get to some of these areas that otherwise you would think of. And I will also say that for this evening, the purpose here this evening, the intent, isn't for any kind of decision-making whatsoever to take place. It would be premature and rushed, etc., if we were to go that route. This is really about providing information. So for the administrative team to provide information, first and foremost to the Board of School Directors, and then also to the various members of the public who are still filing in, which is fantastic to see. So, so it's for information purposes. We want to make sure that you walk away here this evening with a level of understanding, a level of clarity. So make sure you have a chance to ask questions and seek clarification where it's needed. And then we will then keep that in file as we look to make some decisions in subsequent meetings and in upcoming months. Fair enough? All right, so with that said.
Actually, there's a sign-in sheet going around. If that could just keep circulating. Thank you.
Great. So as I move forward, if you feel like I'm going fast, just let me know. There's some slides that have a lot of text, some that have a lot of numbers. If you have questions, just let me know. I know we have a lot of information to get through in a narrow period of time, so I want to try to move kind of swiftly. In addition, I'll try to maintain eye contact and kind of swivel around, but if I don't reach all of you, I'll not be really sorry. The first part that I'm going to go through is really just to give you some information based on research. Just try to have a foundation for us to kind of go on. And then later on in the presentation, you'll see a little bit more data and numbers that may be applicable to how it would appear in our district. All right? So the first slide here, what we have is some research that is in support of class size reductions. And I don't want to read slides, but what you can see, there are 6 points here that talk about academic achievement, how it's sustained, fewer retentions, fewer behavior issues, increased student participation. And again, the important thing here is all these were achieved when there was a lower class size of 13 to 17 students. Nearly all research is based on a very low number. In addition, there's also studies that refute that there's an impact on class size reduction. And these points talk about there are flaws. Most of the flaws in the research have to do with the fact that you really can't have any type of longitudinal type approach because you may gather information, but if you really want to see long-term, you may have to look 10, 15, 20 years down the road to see if there was a major impact. There's data that suggests that there was no impact in improved reading scores. Most of the impact was with low-income minority students. Gains weren't sustained. But the thing that actually surfaced over and over was there are lots of factors to consider. And one of them, the most significant one, would be the quality of the teacher. So there are 3 studies that I thought were most significant. The STAR, the SAGE, and actually a study from Sweden. So I'm going to go through each of them and give you some information. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. So the first one was the STAR, it's the student-teacher achievement ratio. And what they did, and the reason why this is considered the gold standard, because it was done for several years, and it involves so many children and teachers. And what would happen was, students in Tennessee were randomly assigned to either a small class or a larger class. The small class was 13 to 17 students. The larger class was 22 to 25. And it was paid for. And what they found was students' achievement in math and reading and standardized tests did improve. And in addition to that, when they went to what they call phase 2, when they were placed back in regular sized classrooms, that this achievement was sustained. The rationale behind the impact had to do with the fact that the smaller class sizes allowed the students to be more on task. Teachers spent more time on instruction, less time on behavior and class management. The one thing that was necessary is that teachers who were so used to facilitating instruction for larger classes had to be provided professional development to make sure that they knew what to do with smaller classes, fewer students, and how to kind of maximize that time. And the research showed that again that there was that continued high achievement. The positive impact, obviously, of the small classes were more significant based on the experience of the teacher, which then goes back to, again, quality of the teacher is one of the most important factors. The SAGE program was mostly aimed at reducing the impact of impoverished children. And what it actually had to do with not only class size, but throughout the parks. It had to do with a rigorous curriculum, had to do with making sure the building was open longer, and also professional development. So this is the impact. Closer relationships, more knowledge of the students, fewer discipline problems, differentiation is able to happen, increased communication, one-on-one work with children, teacher satisfaction with their job, long-term increase in student graduation rates and admission to college. Now, I include the next study because this one had more long-term results. In Sweden, how it works is there's a lower primary and an upper primary. Lower primary students are grades 1 to 3. Upper primary is 4 to 6. And then there's lower secondary, upper secondary. This is aimed at the upper primary, children in grades 4 through 6, ages 10 through 13. And despite their class size maximums, they studied random classes that if they happen to be, and they studied 4th grade, and in 4th grade, if it happened to be that the enrollment was such that there was a lower class size, they gathered data. They gathered data if it was in the low 20s, and what they had found was that both students in smaller classes had higher cognitive and non-cognitive skills. And with non-cognitive skills, they would ask them questions about their confidence. They would ask them, how do you feel as a learner? How do you feel if you were to get a low test score? And what they found was most significant, I thought, this is the only study that really came back. What happens, the children in this study were born between the ages of the years of 1967 and 1982. And then they came back and did research on these children between 2007 and 2009. And what they found is that children who were in smaller class sizes, higher levels of education, wages, and earnings. And obviously, the best outcomes were only if they were at thresholds such as 15 or 20. California in 1996 had legislation in place where if you had a class size that was under 21, you would receive subsidies. This district would. If it was over 22, you would receive money. You get up to $1,000 per child. And what they found, though, was that there were problems. And the problems were that classroom space was taken from programs like special ed or the arts. And I know this is one that is probably would not go over well. Here's many schools are forced to install portable buildings. And the thought was that the increase in the teaching staff caused a drop in the number of full-time elementary teachers. So what I have is some comparisons and charts that really will compare Council Rock and some area school districts. And you'll see there are class size maximums. Trying to link class size with SAT averages and PSA proficiency. On this slide, you'll notice that for the last three districts, the last three columns, their elementary schools only go up to 5th grade. So move on to the next one. This is average SAT scores from 2012 to 2014. Now, 2 of the districts have multiple high schools, Central Bucks, Council Rock, and actually Pennsbury as well. And what you'll see is the number is the 6th grade class size maximum. And then the verbal, math, and writing averages on the SATs.
Sorry, can you explain this?
Yeah, okay. So each high school has the average, or each district with their high schools, they gave their SAT average in 3 areas. And what I did is not only did I just show them, but I just added that last point here is that number was actually the class size of 6th grade.
Okay,
Okay?
and that's pointing out what exactly?
Well, if we were to find any kind of correlation between class size at the elementary level, and does it indicate achievement at the secondary level?
Is there a correlation there?
So let's talk about that next for a minute, because even as an internal team, you're asking a really good question. The internal team has grappled with this over the past few days. So, Mr. McClay, can you go forward go back one slide. So if you look at 6th grade and even go to 5th grade, where we have all 6 of the districts there, you see that pretty much, you've got Council Rock, Central Bucks, North Penn, Penn Ridge, all in the same ballpark with each other, and then we have a drop in class size down to Lower Marion and Pennsbury, right? So you got 3 or 4 less students that they've established as their maximum. So Joe, flip ahead one. So now as you look at this, we have, and you can just go blue to blue, comparing the verbals. You can go green to green, comparing the math, or I'm not sure what this other color is, comparing the writing averages, right? And so you can see, the high, we have Lower Marion as a high in all of these. So Lower Marion was one of these districts that has 26 students. The other one was Pennsbury. Do I remember that correctly? So Pennsbury, if you look then, is on the lower end, sort of in the middle, trending lower. Here's the problem with this. We're sharing this with you in this presentation, and we'll do the same thing with PSSA scores purely, simply, and only for informational purposes. Because to make the leap to correlation, much less to go even further to causation, is just ignoring the enormous multitude of variables that are out there. So for instance, you look at Lower Marion, and with all due respect to Lower Marion, they have very impressive impressive SAT results there. Well, from a cost standpoint, and I just verified this because I anticipated this coming up, they spend $9,200 more per student every year than what we do in Council Rock. So everything comes with a cost, and you have different programming, different grade level configurations. There are too many variables out there for us to even draw conclusions from a correlation standpoint, much less causation. So this is only out there for information
It's not
purposes.
information we can use though, because it's ambiguous at best.
Well, the information isn't ambiguous, but I think the meaning that you make out of it relative to the class size.
There's no correlation,
Sure.
there's no relevance to it.
Right, right. But for the sake of just showing achievement, knowing that that's what our mission is,
And
the information is
and
being
look at
shared
the
with
difference
you. but-
between, I don't think anybody can say the difference between 29 and 32 kids in a class is that meaningful when you look at Lower Merion and the amount they're able to spend with their property values, their economic situation out there is much different.
Sure.
When you look at Pennsbury, which you could say, yeah, they're big haves, but half of Pennsbury is the big have-nots. So an argument could be made that the economics of the demographics will draw down from the higher income, okay, and the lower income. So it's not really a good analogy at all.
Well, when you can look at this, I looked at this. They chose, for illustrative purposes only, chose the 6th grade. You could have chose first grade. Because it's just, which one has the impact? Where does that impact start? And I think that just your comments, Joe's selection of 6th grade, Robert's question, they point out it is a multifaceted thing. What has the highest correlation, the highest chi-squared, which would drive and draws this item, highest chi-squared, this correlation? Yeah, we don't have that. It's just for illustrative
There
purposes.
are studies that show that economics and home environment
Sorry,
play
parents is the number one.
huge role in the education and development of a child. And so when you look at something like this, you also have to be looking at the demographics that go along with this to understand really what this is all about.
Absolutely. And sir, you're not going to get any argument, I
I
don't think, from anyone.
didn't mean to interrupt, but that just seemed to be so
you're
out of
right.
it seemed to be so out of left field that I couldn't understand it.
Yeah, understood, and this is why the emphasis is there, that this data is shared purely for informational purposes only, because you got demographic variables, you got spending variables, you have just a whole host of variables that go into play. Class size is about one of those. So I think we were actually in
Another committee
premise.
or another set of variables,
Right.
another time.
It may seem out of left field, but one of the purposes of the slide was to know that when you read about the achievement in these studies, that you would be reminded that there are multiple factors. Make sense? I do have PSSA scores for grades 3 to 5, and I added 3rd grade class size guidelines. And then I did the same with.
And Joe, even before you go there,
Sure.
again, to piggyback off of what we were just talking about, here you see it again. So you have the high there on the far right, the low, I guess, looks like it's right beside it, and then you see where Council Rock falls in there, and the class size actually goes with the high and the low, but then you look at Central Bucks with a relatively high class size. In fact, the highest class sizes, we look at D6, and their scores are on the very high end, and Lower Merion, you can say the opposite. So again, it just goes to show how many variables there are. So there's no premise to any of this saying that class size, we're talking here a range from what, 24 to 28? Remember the research that Joe showed. The research talks about being in the mid-teens. We're talking about being in the 24 to 28 range, and the research doesn't show the results are there when you look at that STAR study and the SAGE study, et cetera. So here you're looking at some smaller class sizes, some larger class sizes, and high achievement and low achievement. It's a mixed bag, which again, just to reiterate the point, that there's no, this is for informational purposes only, nothing more, nothing less.
I have this piece of information here as we start talking about more specific data to Council Rock. And the idea is that it's important to know is that every year there are enrollment spikes. Just have to be certain grades, and when I show you this, one of the next slides, it's important to know this information, meaning that in 15-16, with an enrollment spike, these were the three areas. I know these are very small size on the screen here, but what I have here, based on information from September 1st, was average class size in school, each school, and the grade. Now, I will point out, if you see something like here, this 21.7 and 30.5. The fifth grade at Rolling Hills had just opened up, and we had a spike. So just to kind of, I know that some of the numbers may not seem consistent, but I wanted to go through this. One of the reasons for that. And again, I write it down.
The names of the schools down the left column.
Yes.
You can run down that real
Yes.
fast.
Okay, Churchville, Goodnow, Hillcrest, Holland, Welsh, Newtown, Richboro L, Rolling Hills, South Limestone, and Ricetown.
I'm not going to interrupt, because I didn't want to get through this, but again, I'm a little confused.
Okay, go ahead.
Because these class sizes seem to be at or lower than the class sizes that you showed in the other one, which was 28, 29, 30, 27, I believe. These seem to be at or lower that previous one that we were talking about, comparing the districts.
Use the maximum.
And
The
yet,
numbers listed are the maximums,
Yes.
and
The maximum run across the
so
top.
these are the actuals.
These are the actual number of students currently enrolled.
well, this seems to be in line with what that was talking about, and what you're talking about is the correlation between lower class size and performance. And it seems that even though you are within the average of for America, we're not talking about Sweden, okay? You're not at 17, okay, or 13. Okay?
Yes.
So you're here, and you're not at the top. Council Rock is not at the top when you show that graph. Low Merion is.
With regard to
It's the correlation between class size and performance.
Okay.
So I'm
Can I
confused.
let's hold this to the end, because this isn't really a conversation about
Well,
performance
that's why
per se.
I,
So let's just,
Yeah.
we'll hold that to the end, but what this slide is showing is because we're having a conversation about our class size policies
sure.
and,
I didn't want to interrupt you.
This is
No,
just
sure.
showing,
I'm blaming you. My fault.
this is just allowing us to see what in this current school year, what our average class sizes are in every school in every grade.
Can I just ask what is the number of, for each class that it's supposed to be?
That's at the top.
Okay, because I was told, like, when my daughter was in 5th grade, we're in Hillcrest, she had to go to Holland because Hillcrest was full. And I believe they told me it was 26. And when she went to Holland, there was 31 students in the class. So she was moved to a different school, and there was more kids in that. And then even looking at this, Holland has 12, where Hillcrest, my daughter's class in kindergarten has 27 students in it, not 24, 25. Now, I was told because 3 of them are life skills, that for some reason they don't count as being 27 students. I have an education background. I also worked with special ed students. I know that they are a student in the classroom. The teacher still has to teach them. So, you know, I'm a little upset that my daughter has 27 kids in a kindergarten
Just to
class.
clarify just the one point, is that when there is a reference to students in special ed, these students who enroll in district classes, not learning support. And there are children who, for most of their day, likely are in a district classroom, and maybe only in their homeroom for a small part of the day.
Joe,
And
we could
I
also
have-
say, to
Yes.
be back to that also as well, is when those students come to the regular classroom, they come with adult support with them, so bring
Oh,
them.
I know, yes, I know, I was a wraparound, but I was a certified teacher. It was a different situation in the school that I was in. But I also know in my job that the teacher still teaches those kids. So they are still 27 students, even if it's a half hour. During the education time, there are still 27 students in their class, not 24.
The next slide is actually the actual numbers, and in the parentheses is the number of sections in that specific grade. What the data shows is that Council Rock is comparable to other districts to some degree with class size, student achievement, and you'll know as well as in given years, some sections are going to have fewer, others are going to have more. There are spikes in enrollment that impact class size. And actually, we do have a process for assigning additional sections that's similar to most districts. What it doesn't show is that small class sizes provide opportunity for small group instruction and one-on-one. So our current practices of assigning a number of sections, what we wait till is until kindergarten registration is completed. And then what we do is we take a look at, as we move the students up to the next grade level, and we look at the new registrations, and then we establish a number of sections per grade level. And it's based on our guidelines from the district. And then we allocate staffing after that. And what we do is determine by June 30th this number. If we have a new registration, if there's space in our home school, that's where it'll be. If it happens to be that they register after July 1st, and it happens to be that actually the grade level has been reached, the student is enrolled in sister school, in neighboring school. So the next numbers are based on if we were to reach that optimal class size in Council Rock and go with a maximum of 17 in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. We would go from this number of teachers to this number. Now, for example, Goodnose classes, their third grade was 122 students. That would be 8 sections for third grade if we had 17. And the reason I get my 17 is that's what research says you have those benefits. That's where you reach those benefits. So if I go to the next slide, you'll see if we had that, and we had that increase in teachers, and we were looking for that maximum benefit, it would mean an additional 60.3 teachers. We would need 50 additional classrooms. And based on the mean cost for professional staff, $8.6 million for the teaching staff.
Is that inclusive, salary and benefits?
Yes.
Retirement?
Employment and so forth, yeah. To make a conclusion here would be is if the school district doesn't reach that optimal class size, it wouldn't get all the aforementioned benefits. However, any reduction in class size would provide opportunities for that small group instruction, for the one-on-one
So
instruction.
Joe, let me ask you a question, just
Yes.
for clarity.
Yes,
The assumption that you make at 17 includes the change in class size, but does it also include a redistricting that would get to 17?
no, that's why I said it's based on if it happened using current class size guidelines this year.
No, so,
Yeah.
so,
Just,
Right now, we've got class sizes that vary, and if we went to 25, you know, we need 22 sections, and we go back to the math, just because the kids aren't laid out
Yeah,
equally
right.
across districts. So does this account for the fact that then they would be laid out equally, or would, in addition to incremental costs to go down, we need to see a lot of redistricting? That would be my assumption to get to that,
See,
right?
if we were going to go to 8 sections of third grade good now, and have the other increases, would it be possible to have that number in that building?
So just so I
Right,
understand,
did
what
you
you're,
calculate this based on our actual enrollment?
Yes.
Right, so if he looked at it in terms of the current enrollment, and if the class size is reduced with current students.
in the building there,
Right.
Yes.
where maybe we had floated, or thinking, we floated a plan of how you combine two schools, which would increase the number of kids. The struggle here, of course, is that with that maximum, if you're one kid over that maximum, we saw Holland Elementary had 12. The maximum is 25. That means maybe that must have lost a kid somewhere in the mix, but together, that was probably 26 at some point, which is over the class size maximum of 25, so it splits into two. It became two, which then 2 children disappeared. I don't know, but 2 children disappeared, and left it as 12. So that the issue really comes to be, as you can accumulate more children into one building of that same grade, you come closer to the class size maximum, you approach that class size maximum. Here you see the fluctuation because you're splitting small pools of children based on the maximum class size that exists. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. You know what? So for example, each class is 17, 3 sections, max would be 51. So if you reach the 52nd student, it would dictate you would open up that 4th section. What may accommodate one grade if you did that could actually cause another grade with their numbers to jump a section. So it's tough to, but you would have to consider that as well.
And so Dr. Fraser, so in spite of what you said in your opening, that this is just for information, that we don't want to make a decision. So my sense is that the reason this was on the academic standards agenda is that if we're going to talk about whether we can close a school, we need to have some idea as to whether these class size guidelines that are in place, that were on the top row in some of the tables, are they likely to change or not? And I have to say, in my time on the school board, I haven't been hearing from the administration any frustration that we need to get to 17, or we need to get to 10, or we need to go higher. My sense is that it's been okay. When you compare to other districts, we're in the neighborhood. So is there any sense from the administration, is there a likelihood that we're not okay, or that we are okay, or?
Well, I think the focus and the premise of this evening from the administration's viewpoint is to provide the information, especially from a research point of view. Again, some of the other data is out there purely for informational purposes, but really to understand that there's limited research, valid and reliable research on class size data and the longitudinal impact of it. And what is there, we've critically consumed, and Joe has provided a very high-level summary here this evening. What we would be interested in...
You basically identified that the strongest research is in this very small class size space.
Yes, that's correct.
A space that no district, public school district
That's correct.
occupies. And you've done the what if. Hey, let's pretend that we wanted to go there. What would it mean? And okay.
Yes, that's correct. So our idea here this evening, continuing with the premise of this evening, is we have the board represented here, obviously, as a board committee, and then we have the good fortune of having a number of our public here this evening, is for us to get just a checking of the temperature of how people are thinking, how they're feeling. Are you going to hear the administration this evening or at any point in the future make a recommendation to go to class sizes of 17? No, you're not. You're not going to hear that tonight. You're not going to hear that in the future. But I don't want to be completely absolute with that because there are gradations to everything. So we're providing the information. Let's open it up for conversation is the idea. And with that said, I'll tell you that one of the limitations of the research, and Joe even pointed it out in that STAR study, is they went with classrooms up to 17, and then I think the next band started at 22, right? 22 to 25 or 22 up. You have sort of this gap in between of 5 students that the STAR study, and the STAR study is the seminal study, the seminal class size study going back to the 80s. It is limited because it did not study that interim little group there. So no, you're not going to hear us recommend 17, but there can be conversations certainly.
And I just want to ask
within
one
there.
more. I want to ask one more question, and you can either answer it now or later, whenever. But you know, I'm a researcher. I love studies. I think they're great. However, there is a tremendous value in folks that go into the classroom, know what a classroom is, and my assumption is that a classroom can fall to pieces based on the behavior of 1 or 2 kids and their character, and that actually the difference between having 25 and 26, because you've already gone, like if I were a parent, if I have 2 kids, each of us can have the 2 kids. If I had 15 kids and it was me and my wife, or I had 20, it's the same nightmare, right?
And have a TV show.
Right. And so there's a place where it scales, where the techniques of dealing with it. But I honestly don't have that practical experience. So if you ever have anyone, or you yourself want to speak to that, I'd love to hear it. I know that you have opinions about
Patty,
it.
did you have something
Yeah,
to
Ms.
say?
Sexton.
Well, I mean, I question the assumptions taken from some of the real research. My knowledge of the research on class size says not that if you lower class size, you increase student achievement, but if you lower class size, you change the way, you can help the teacher change the way they teach. And the changing in the way you teach may promote increased learning. So the question isn't just about the number, but what a teacher does with the number that sits in front of her. So that, to say 17 is the hard and cold and fast number, not if the teacher is going to teach 17 the way they taught 35, and not if the classroom doesn't have the ability to bring in all the resources necessary to provide for the needs of kids on the outside of the average. And so I think that 17 is a number. I've taught 45 in a class in my first year. I've taught 30, 33, 23. It depends on what you're being asked to do and what resources you've been given. For the PSSAs and the other studies, the main thing that comes out of the research are 2 things. Student achievement is based on 2 things: the socioeconomic status of the child and, remarkably, the education of the mother. The education of the mother, because the more words a child hears, highly educated mother more likely to talk more to the child, even to the baby as you push them around the supermarket. The more words a child hears before they're 6, the more brain connections they make, the better they do in school. And so those are the main factors, and most of those are out of school's control. For us here, the studies that you mentioned, many were done in socioeconomic settings that are not Council Rock. So when you look at us on a bell curve, we are way over here. We have no achievement problem. We have individuals who need support and who may achieve better with different strategies. Schools might be easier to manage, but we are rarely, in 12 years as a school board member, have been contacted about disciplinary issues that have risen to the level where, there's been a huge fight in the auditorium. Rarely in 12 years. This hasn't happened here because we raise our children better.
So I want to make a comment consistent with what Bill was saying, and it's important for me about having class size discussion early in the year and having that full day kindergarten decision in the year, because we spent a lot of time on capital planning last year, we had a lot of conversation about, hey, are we using our buildings efficiently? So for me, having a conversation about the buildings before we really put a stake in the ground around our commitment to our class size guidelines, and is there an appetite at some point in the future for full-day kindergartens putting the cart before the horse a little bit, in my opinion. So to your point about recommendations, if I look at the class sizes now, they do vary a bit across the size of the district, and there's varying capacity across our buildings. And, you know, we've kind of asked you to come back and give us a view of what that looks like. And you know, in the current world, what's that mean if we move the kids around to the buildings? So what I personally be looking for is your opinions, collectively within the administration, around the strategies for learning that could or couldn't change, and are these guidelines the ones that we want to go with? Because, you know, to our point, it seems to be working, and if that's the case, put a stake in the ground there. The next piece comes in, is there an appetite, and I know we're going to go to this later, to do full day kindergarten in sometime in the next 5 years as part of our capital plan? And based on those two answers, then when you come back and talk to us around what buildings look like, we can have a really good conversation to guide us there. So I'm glad we're talking about it now, but I'd love ultimately, after you hear what people say, is to put your collective expertise on and say, here's how we're going to get to the scores that Lower Merion has efficiently, and here's how we're going to use our buildings based on those two things.
Right, and just to understand, for me also, it's not as simple as Bill said, you know, do we want to maintain these class sizes? It's also in the framework of how our policy fills sections and when, and even if you keep all the class size targets the same, if you were to have a different approach to how you fill sections and when and what deadlines are, how would that change the efficiency in the buildings as well?
Well, for me, it's the question I have heard people put forward that yet. I don't agree with it. Talking that the inclusion of technology would allow you to maintain or go up with the number of students in the class. You have an opinion on that, on the work you've done or seen? I think you were doing something else.
Yeah, right. I had direct experience in my history, recent history with that, and my answer to that is absolutely not. And one of the reasons for that, and I want to be very clear with this entire audience, and Patty, I agree with everything you said around socioeconomic status and the correlations and probably a
That
level of
doesn't mean we
qualification.
can't work to teach. I don't use
Well,
that as an excuse.
no,
No excuse for academic achievement.
Absolutely. The research, and to me, where the research on class size data is very limited, there is a plethora of research on this other end, and that is what are those variables that have the most significant impact on student learning. And number one, and Joe referenced this earlier, is quality of instruction. That's number one.
Excuse me, he didn't say quality of instruction.
The teacher.
He said the teacher.
Yes.
But if the teacher isn't trained in the quality of the instruction that you're referring to, that Patty is referring to, then you can have the greatest, brightest, most wonderful teacher in the world. But if her teaching methodologies are not conducive, it's not the same.
I don't want to argue semantics
It's
with
not
you.
semantics. It's
Well,
not the same.
Okay, that's
Methodology
disagree,
and
let's move on.
personality is not the same.
Well, I would tell you that if a teacher isn't employing the best methodologies to produce the best results, then that teacher isn't wonderful, great, or any other adjective that we want to throw in there. To me, it's about results. It's about producing those results. So there is a preponderance of research that will speak to the quality of instruction, to the quality of that classroom teacher, and to me, those are not exclusive ideas. Disagree if you would like, but to me, they are not exclusive ideas. And the second biggest impact that influences and impacts student learning is leadership. The leadership that's provided, and that's formal leadership and it's informal leadership. And then we know across this state, across this country, and internationally, that these issues around SCS in particular, socioeconomic status, wealth, relative wealth, education, etc., the correlations are huge around all that. So it's all of these pieces, and so we have a certain demographic here in Council Rock. We are so fortunate to have the demographic that we do here in Council Rock. So I'm tempted to say what I want to say in terms of what my recommendation would be from a class size standpoint, but I will wait. But I will tell you that going back to Mr. Druck's question around technology, no, technology cannot, should not, must not ever be a replacement for that teacher when it comes to producing the results for our kids, ever. So we employ effective methodologies of instructional technology because it's good for students, because it can enhance learning when done well, but it still takes that teacher to understand when, how, and in what ways to employ that technology. So I don't see any connection or correlation between those two. So I'm glad that you asked that question, if that thought might be out there.
I agree.
I was going to ask you, I'm sure you thought about this too, but what about, obviously we know financially, it's not going down to 17 students anytime soon, we know that. But what about part-time classroom aides? So you keep the class size at the 26 level, but you have a classroom aide part-time during the core subjects.
And currently, and gentlemen, you can, with your history here, that's more obviously expensive than mine at this point, can speak to some of these. We do have teaching assistants. I guess the spirit of your question is, could we or should we have more teaching assistants? That's a whole other body of research and a whole other, vessel that we would need to get down into. So, question noted.
I'm sorry. So, Mr. Block asked, when you offered up those numbers for the teaching positions, did that take into account redistricting to be as efficient as possible? I believe you said you did it by building, right? So I just quickly did it by the district. So that would kind of assume redistricting, and the total with 17, not that we're doing it, doesn't sound like ever, would be 318. So what was your total? I'm just curious.
318.
Teachers needed to do a class size of 17 district-wide per grade. So what was your total?
I didn't have that because what I was really looking at
I'm just curious what
was-
the difference is if we do get efficient and redistrict.
And is that all teachers K to 6?
All teachers K to 6, average class size of 17
Right.
with our
So if you
September
had maximum
enrollment
efficiency
district-wide.
of one
Correct.
school, right?
Yes.
Hypothetical.
So I'm interested in the difference, to
Yeah.
see what getting truly efficient
Right.
means, what the difference is.
According to this spreadsheet, which lives on our homepage, and we update on a regular basis throughout the school year, this has us, and this is just from a couple days ago, at 226.
Right, but this was with the 17 class size of 17, so he had
Right.
an increase of,
Yeah, but he did only K.
Right, so
okay, 3, okay.
So I think, Amy,
But you
the-
can take you can look at the enrollment spreadsheet that's online. see
Yes,
the
that's
number
what I
of
was
teachers.
just doing, that's what I was.
Right, so you can tally up the number of sections that are K3 district-wide, and you can see that.
But jumping off your point,
Yes.
I don't think 17 is realistic.
No.
Anytime soon,
but I'm just
but no,
curious,
but just going back from what you were
doesn't
saying
it-
though, is I think what we have to look like, what we have to look at is a total of, if we were at maximum, what would the number of sections we need across the district look like, so we compare that to what we have, and then to assume capacity to have flexibility, what would we look like at 80 or 90%? Then I think that starts to help us look at whether it's in the right place or not, do we have a use of efficient space?
I think we need to move on to full day kindergarten. I know a lot of people have questions, so if we have time at the end, we can get to that. But you can always,
Mine kind of ties into kindergarten, I swear it's a segue.
okay.
The third grade numbers on the PSSAs, they showed where they were. A lot of the research on full day kindergarten shows the benefit of full day K maxes out at third grade. How many of those districts that you showed the scores for had full day K? Because I think that's an important correlation and an important facet to understand. Does Lower Merion offer full day K? Does Pennsbury? We know we don't, and I think the anomaly of our PSSA scores 3 to 5 versus our SAT scores against the peers is telling. It would be very interesting to know.
Pennsbury
That's gonna come up. Pennsbury does, but they just recently initiated one. But we do actually talk about local
That's Upper
districts.
Mayfield.
That's right.
So,
I'm being patient, Mr. Frederickson.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Waiting for it. Now, as I go through this presentation. There we go. As I go through this presentation, I know that some people are very eager to see the information. What I try to do is, based on research that I've gathered, you'll see that a lot of it is in support, and a lot of it will tell you another side of the story. So I'm going to get a chance to try to present things.
Hey, Joe, I'm sorry, I want to interrupt
Yes.
you. And this question is not for board members, so board members, please don't participate. Just out of curiosity, who's in favor of full-day kindergarten?
You mean
One hand.
publicly paid?
It's kind of a loaded question.
I mean, that part
It's not
factors
about
in.
full-day kindergarten, it's how it's implemented.
No, I'm just
Who's in favor?
curious.
How about you say this? Raise your hand if you're here for this presentation of full-day kindergarten. That's what brought you here tonight. Pro or con? Thank you.
So what I want to do the best I can is to express a few points. And the first one would be is that the studies on the difference between, they focus on the difference between the two. But in addition, it's got to be noted that there are multiple variables that we've mentioned a couple times. There are many, many variables. So when we talk about possible success for a child who went through a full day, we do know that there are so many other variables that would contribute to that. So what I've done is tried to compare the two. The first part I have here is that students tend to perform better on tests of reading, math, and science. And the information I have from the U.S. Department of Education is that they have students in full-day programs made greater gains in math and in reading compared to those children in half-day.
And the source on that again is?
Department of Education, National Center for Advanced Statistics.
I want to be sure of that.
Yep, that's right. When I looked at another study, it basically said that students in full-day kindergarten have significantly higher scores. However, it faced almost zero in grades 2 to 5. And this is from Washington State Institute for Public Policy.
But it doesn't separate the programs. It doesn't say whether they are private provider programs or public provider programs.
This was public. This was public.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. Increased time for reading and math instruction. And from the study in 2004, 60 more minutes of reading instruction and 30 more minutes of math instruction daily. What again is the phenomenon that I bring up is the fade out. Basically, non-full day students do catch up. I don't want to read all these to you. I'll give you a chance to read through them. Kind of going back and forth. And to remove subjectivity, these were all items that were either done through parent surveys, teacher surveys, based on data. So you may have, for example, there's more time spent in creative classes that are provided. The counter to that would be more time spent with the children. I will say that I've done from parents who do not want to fall short. Let's just be fair and just let's get through the presentation. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. What was the question? The question was, do we know how many kindergarten students at Council Rock now are enrolled in some kind of either pre-afternoon program or post-morning program?
36%. So you'll see it later on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get a chance to show you. That's a good question. Okay. So I have a little bit more as well. Go ahead.
Can I ask sort of a general question?
Yes.
Are school districts mandated to provide any kindergarten at all?
Not in the state of Pennsylvania.
They're also not mandated to provide busing
Yes, they are.
Just curious.
once they're over two.
Or unsafe,
So there's no funding for kindergarten?
Is there any data between PM and AM? Because I know that students learn better in the morning compared to the afternoon.
In know, I say I don't know only because I didn't look. You know,
But it's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter's a morning person and is a piano student.
Yeah. One of the things I do want to point out, and we've emphasized it, is that when we talk about half-day kindergarten, the student growth is dependent upon the quality of the teacher or instruction, the class size, the presence of the classroom teacher or an aide, the economic condition of the household, the structure of the family. That list could go on and on. So to some of the information you guys had asked before, Pennsylvania is only one of 6 states that doesn't mandate kindergarten. The 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, 387 offer solely a full-day program. And it's important to get to know solely. We do have students here who go to a full-day program. They're they have the disability, they're in our special ed district classes. It's a handful, and what you'll find when I got this data, there were lots of school districts that had AM sections, PM sections, a full day. But what I was looking for is those districts that only had full day, 77%. In Bucks County, though, 6 of 13 districts. This is the question you were asking. So, when we notice that our number of students that are in our class of kindergarten, when that grade of students, when that class of students moves to first grade, there's a 36% increase. That's on average over the last 5 years. Yes?
Stephen's question was, is the current count taking the right population? How many are going to enrichment program even before kindergarten, after kindergarten?
Okay.
I emailed our
Yes.
Department of Transportation this morning asking that question, and it's a little tough for them to know what is like a daycare program versus a kindergarten enrichment
And something
program.
even if a parent picked up the child as a car rider and drove them to that
Yeah.
car rider. Right. And then the other part would be is how many days a week do they go?
Yeah.
Why do you ask that question? What's the importance of that question?
It's to identify the quality of the families in the district from
Need full-day kindergarten for the purpose of? For the purpose of? Any full-day kindergarten for the purpose of?
I'm
I'm going to check the question. I want to proceed here. Okay. So, knowing that 36% increase, I took this number, 522 students. And what I did is I didn't multiply that and get a 36% increase. What I actually did was took the number at every school and increased each school by 36%. And given that, if we had a full-day program in Council Rock this year, there would be 711 students enrolled in kindergarten. Given that, we would go from 26 sections to 33. The common assumption would be is 26 half-day programs would result in 26 full-day, but it wouldn't be the case because we would have an increased amount of students, and that's why I put 33 sections, which again would mean 33 classrooms, 33 teachers. In addition, if we went to a full day, we would have to increase the number of specialist teachers as well. Okay. So given that information, this would be the impact. 23 more teachers. This is based on the mean cost for professional staff. 18 additional classrooms, and the key thing to note about that is it would be along with the additional cost for adding bathrooms. It is not mandated, it is not code, but it's a common practice to have bathrooms in the kindergarten classrooms. In addition, there would be the purchase of furniture and books and resources. The Champions Enrichment Program would be eliminated. We would eliminate the midday busing, and that cost would be a savings of $208,000. But the key point to know is the arrival and dismissal of school would have more students and the possibility of more buses, and that would be a cost to consider as well.
So just to, based on your assumptions there, did you maintain a current class size of 20 Or did you assume a class size of 24, 25 when you did the math?
25.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I know, you used the maximum when you did the math.
Yep, 25. Good question.
But once again, to the question there before, that was 25 using, which I guess is answered by the question of you populated each class, each building individually.
Yes, each building
So while in total, the number would grow the same, you want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's 25 children with one teacher.
Correct.
Okay.
So what's the total expense?
You know, it would be very tough to figure out how much we would need for furniture, books, and resources.
Plus that.
Yes, this is really just to give you an idea
Lots of money.
of what it would take to do it.
Well, the other costs that aren't identified yet, we need to get, if we go down that, would be one-time things. Once you put the bathroom in, you have the bath. Once you buy the books, it's just going in. The 3.25 million is a recurring cost because that's year after year of staff. So that was easier to calculate, so we know what the average was.
Well, where would 18 additional classrooms come from? Are we building a school for $40 million for 18 additional classrooms? I mean, that's what.
Well, that goes back to the whole current capital plan that we have. So this will inform our decisions once we understand what the capacity of the current buildings. We might find, and I'm for illustrative purposes, we might find we have the classrooms to do it. At which point, whether we have an appetite to do it or not will guide being able to do it and when, or saying we're not going to do it and we're going to be able to consolidate our buildings.
What is the reason why you're considering full-day kindergarten in Council Rock?
We're just getting information.
Getting
Sure, I'm not
We're
sure.
over 300, why
You
is,
speak, you speak about this appetite for it. Do you
well,
have an
many
appetite for it?
districts, many districts around us have started to do it. And
Yeah.
what my question was, are we
Yeah.
going to be required to? Because I saw other districts do it. Talking to some people who keep up with, said, I don't think we're going, Pennsylvania is going to require it to, but we try to stay abreast of when we see district around us doing something, we need to gather our information and make sure we know what's happening. And 75% of school districts in the state do it. So if the state decided to require it,
Don't you remember when you were a little kid and your mom said, you know, if your friend jumps off the cliff, or you must jump off the cliff?
Okay, but to be
I have yet to hear.
He just listed all the reasons. He just listed all the
Is
benefits.
Hang on, let's.
Yes.
But just to be clear, the reason why we're having this
Yeah.
conversation is we're
Still
in the
part of
midst
our
of
capital
talking
plan.
about a five-year plan.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it would be, it is
They're
only fair to
responsible not to
consider
do it.
all the different variables that may come into play as we look into the future planning and uses of our buildings and costs.
Right, and if we close the
So-
school, but then next year want to do full-day kindergarten, we could end up really blowing it from a fiscal
Well, I'm
standpoint.
trying to
And we're
find
trying not
out
to do
why
that.
you want to do full-day kindergarten in a school district like this.
We haven't said that we'd like to do it
we
yet.
want to gather
We need
information
to-
so we know whether we want to do it or
Exactly.
not.
So everybody else is doing it.
No, not everybody, not everybody. I just said, we went around the board table and said, who's
Yes.
interested in hearing about this? I said, I am because I know some
Yes.
surrounding districts have done it. I
Right.
have a concern that the state, maybe not, could come in. I'd like to be informed of what it would mean to
So
our
your
district.
reasoning is that the state may mandate this?
Wait, there's a big thing here.
I wanted information.
I think the thing you have to understand is, at this point,
So
the board is just, the board is just asking for information. There are people who come to us and say, why aren't you doing it?
Right.
And right now, all we're sitting here to do is to hear the reasons that you would do it and the reasons you wouldn't.
Okay, and
Right.
That's where we are.
Okay, so when we don't know if there's an appetite for this. This is purely for discussion because it is our due diligence to collect the information and understand all the different variables. But because we are pressed for time, the school board directors have to go into a meeting at 7:30. What I'd like to do, in all fairness, because there are so many people here, is to just sort of go around the room and allow everybody to have a comment. If you could try and keep it brief and you could follow it up with us with emails. Emails for the administrators are all on the website. You can reach the board members at boardmembers@cric.org. But just because you all come out, and I'm sure you have something to say, I just want to be fair.
Right, and Denise, let's make sure that we have any other board questions or board discussion with these guys. We'll just get through that first. I'm not sure if we have any more of that, but just so we can be expeditious about our time, then we'll just line.
Ron already had his.
Yeah, he's in
He had yours too.
Okay, I'll pass on mine.
So any other comments? No, I want to hear from board members first, then once we get public comment, when we get public comment, we'll take everybody who wants to talk, so Patty.
So for me, I don't believe in terms of full-day kindergarten. I believe that we have a community that's rich in resources as far as afternoon or morning kindergarten experiences out there. We have great kindergarten classes. Our kids get a really good beginning. I understand and I can see an appetite among parents for the need to cover childcare in the afternoons. But the question of childcare is available throughout our community by many private providers. If, as a school district, we take on this private provider of childcare responsibility, we take on millions of dollars of expense, something that I'm not sure we can do now or in the future, given the way education is currently funded.
Patty, this,
So,
is, not,
I'm
wait a
not-
second. This is not a substitute for daycare or babysitting.
No, I would say this to you, Rick, that is this, that from what I have seen in the field, in classrooms, is that we see now kindergartners not receiving early childhood education, but kindergartners receiving test prep. And that is not at all what kindergarten is ever supposed to be. It frightens me. If you talk to a teacher, you will see kindergarten children sitting at tables filling out little forms. Gone are play corners, gone are puppets, gone are water tables, gone are sand tables. All of those things are gone. And let me finish. They are part of early childhood education because when we bring them into the system, the public education system, we put them on the track to be prepared to take standardized testing. And that is the worst of what I see in kindergarten, the two-part kindergarten. I would hope and I would wish it was all about creativity in kindergarten and experience and reading and being read to. The world has changed. That's just my opinion.
Can I just say, can I just, we have 22 minutes until some of us have to be across the hall, and I really very much want to hear any public comments. So if we could just, in some organized fashion, start it, please.
Right, and please also remember, if we don't hear it here, we have public comment there, you can have 3 minutes come up and tell us. If we don't get to you, we're going to go right next door and have public comment.
At the beginning of our
Okay.
meeting, there's public comment.
Just make sure you sign up.
Minutes there. We only have 22 minutes left here, and as I said, board members at crsd.org or any administrator can be
Is
reached.
there a kindergarten teacher here who might like to say something?
I used to teach kindergarten, and I'm also the parent of a first grader.
Yeah.
So if that's helpful, I mean, first of all, I just wanted to say I'm Janine McCullough, I'm the parent of a first grader at Goodnow. I really absolutely appreciate the work that you've done to put this information together. I think even seeing things like the cost and number of classes is very helpful in informing this decision. The reason that my husband and I came tonight is that, and why we're really interested in full-day kindergarten is, I mean, I couldn't disagree with you more in terms of the kindergarten program we experienced at Goodnow. It was very much, I think, developmentally appropriate, academically rich, and also offered like really a lot of special activities for our students. Part of the reason I would like to see it move to full day is so that they can continue to offer that along with more academics. So in 2.5 hours a day, it's an awful lot for a kindergarten teacher, when including developmentally appropriate things like recess and snack and art and music and all those wonderful programs we want 5-year-olds to have, to also have time for adequate reading and math instruction. So I think from our experience, we paid for a separate enrichment program, and I'd be happy to pay for a half-day enrichment program for my 2-year-old when he gets to kindergarten age. But I really do think as an option for all students, if it's financially feasible, it really is to the benefit of kindergartners to have time for both the academic piece and really the developmentally appropriate enrichment, which I think is very successfully offered at Goodnow. At the same time, I do understand the fiscal considerations. I was actually really surprised, I think, to see kind of the number of additional classrooms and some of the renovations that are required. So I think it fits in well with what you're talking about in terms of doing this long-term capital planning. So I do understand there's certainly that financial restraint. But from a parent perspective, from a former kindergarten teacher perspective, from a current educational researcher perspective, I think full-day kindergarten, which is becoming much more of a trend, is an option here for a lot of good reasons.
I want to respond to why you should look at this program, and I'm a parent. Actually, I have a minor in secondary education, which I know doesn't mean much, but I have some kind of background in education. As a parent, I have a 4-year-old who's extremely precocious. She loves to learn. She loves being in school. I mean, she gets really upset on weekends when she can't go to preschool. And to tell her that next year, when she's ready for kindergarten, she can only go half a day, I think is going to be very upsetting to her because she loves school and she loves learning. And it's not about childcare. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I can keep her at home if I want to, but instead I'm going to be looking at either enrichment programs or a full-day kindergarten program that's private, which honestly I think is very disappointing. The fact that I would need to go to an outside area in order to provide my child with what I think she needs developmentally and educationally. In addition, we didn't really cover this in the Kids Very Well research presentation, but I would love to see what the social benefits are of full-day kindergarten for children, because that is one of the areas where I do feel like my daughter could really use a full-day program. I have a younger child as well, so when she's home with me, I can work with her, I can play with her, I can read to her, and I do all those things. However, she's generally stuck in the house while baby's napping. And I think that that is a detriment to her.
Just go around. Do our best.
I think there's many parents that when their kid gets to be 3 or 4 are sending them to full-day preschool programs. And so I do think it's a bit of a disconnect that you're sending your child to a full-day program for 1 or 2 years to all of a sudden then move to a half-day program, where if you are able to stay at home, that's one thing, or otherwise then you subsidize with other programs as well. Anecdotally, I do have friends in other school districts who have had children whose one child go through half-day kindergarten, one child goes through full-day kindergarten, and drastically saw those differences socially. The ability to make friends, to make those connections, their thinking skills. So I think it is something that has to strongly be considered moving forward for the benefit of our students, especially in a district like Council Rock. We moved to this town, well, for Council Rock, and so I was shocked actually when I found out that it's half-day kindergarten here.
I have a question about the mechanics of that. When you talk about spending more money on a program, we have the Act 1 index that we're not allowed to raise taxes on. If we implement a new program, is that an exception at all to Act 1? Can that be done?
No, it is not. That's not one of the allowable exceptions. The only way you can go above the Act 1 index and then the allowable exceptions on top of that would be to go out to referendum. So that would be the only pathway.
So my question would be, I don't like personally the idea of going out for a tax referendum for a tax to pay for something in school. I'd rather have a referendum around the community still in a full-day kindergarten. So it takes it back to you seven. So we're gonna go around, we're gonna get to it.
Well, I do have an elementary background in K-5, even though I'm not a teacher currently. And part of why I moved to this area, I'm going to piggyback, is because of Council Rock School District. I personally went to full-day kindergarten. My entire family has gone to full-day kindergarten, and we've all excelled. Not saying that those who do not go do not excel, but in terms of social situations, in terms of differentiation, in terms of everything that I've learned in my educational background, from what I've seen of what you're able to do in the time allotment for a full-day kindergarten versus a part-day kindergarten, it's amazing to see how much education that you can add, and the social skills, and the bonding, and the relationships that come from that, and then you see students grow into a first-day classroom, and they're much better acclimated because they already understand. So, hot off the presses from the PDE today, an hour or so before I arrived here, I found out that 11 additional public school districts in Pennsylvania are offering full-day kindergarten for the first time this year. I won't be able to tell you if it's a district standard until I have the enrollment, which will probably come out until November, but 11 school districts are offering full-day kindergarten to some, at least, of their students this year for the first time. So my guess would probably be that about half of them are created as standard. I do think that one thing that we do here at Council Rock, because we are blessed with our demographic, is we do have, I wouldn't call it an attitude, but a thought that we don't have to offer certain things for our students because parents can afford it. And thank God, that is the truth. But there are certainly some families who can't, and we can't have this attitude because not everyone can afford all of these things that are highly beneficial. And in addition to that, I just don't like to hear that. I think we need to always be thinking about what is going to be, what's the best thing for the kids. So that being said, this is a huge expense. As many of you know, a good friend of mine has submitted an idea that would offset approximately half of the cost of doing this. It would require hiring about half the number of teachers. It enables us to be more efficient with the buildings we have. I would like to politely disagree with Mr. Black's comment about cart before the horse. I really think the reason that this should be discussed now is that it's a dynamic decision. It's not buildings or full-day kindergarten. It's not full-day kindergarten or buildings. Really, it has to be a full decision because these things do impact each other. If we close the school, goodbye full-day kindergarten. We won't be able to do it. We won't have the classroom. So if there's an appetite for full-day kindergarten, maybe we want to maintain these buildings and not close one of them so that we can do this. And then I would just say with regards to, I think what you were trying to bait me to say is that, well, we need childcare, and it came up again across the room. And whether that's the case or not, those children, whether it's because it's a child care issue or not, those children are getting 2 half-day experiences with busing in between. This is a need in this community, okay? And this is what these children are getting as a result of the need. So are we okay with that, or do we want to better serve the children and give them 1 full-day experience? Because certainly 2 half-day experiences with transportation in between is not stellar for a 5-year-old. We could be doing better by them. And if we can be doing better by them and offsetting half of that cost, I'd be really psyched. I'm a stay-at-home mom too. It's not about childcare for me, but I would like to see my kid in a full-day experience. And I kind of think too, there's this high-pressure situation. Don't you think those kindergarten teachers that would half a day feel that pressure much more to get that academics in? If we give them that full day, there comes the time for the fun, which they need to see. So that's most of my comments. Sorry.
And Amy, I appreciate that, but just to be clear, you and I do completely agree.
Yes,
so
okay.
what you're saying
Good,
is
perfect. Glad to hear it, yeah.
I gave her my time.
I'm a parent of 2 young kids who would benefit from full-day kindergarten, so I'm a little biased here, but from the other point of view, I'm also a real estate agent, and I see a lot of young families who are looking for the houses in our school district are asking the question, do we have a full daycare, full kindergarten or not? And I believe Lower Moreland does have it, and they do prefer a girl there, maybe because of that. I don't know if it's a major decision-making point for them or not, but it would definitely help to bring young working families with small kids into this school district. Important thing to consider.
Many may know that I've been a strong supporter of full-day kindergarten for at least the last decade. All the reasons are out there. The research show, I think, is obsolete because of based on the increases in methodologies, teaching, curriculum. We can't rely on outdated research, but we can rely on common sense. And to me, common sense dictates a full-day kindergarten is best for these kids. One of the main reasons, though, besides, I believe, behavioral issues, self-esteem, increase in educational excellence, is identification of kids at risk. I believe if it's in a full-day kindergarten where a teacher is with this kid for that long a period of time, a kid that's at risk will be identified that could slip through the cracks. And to me, that's worth it right there. And over time, that will save the school district money. The sooner you identify a child at risk, the sooner we can deal with it, and over time, we'll save the school district money. So there's all these reasons for full-day kindergarten. I understand that there are some school districts that had full day and went back to half day. I'd love to know the reasons for it. My guess is it's budget, but I don't know what the reasons are. Maybe we can find that out.
Well, there's a lot more reasons than that. I know we can't get into it now.
Let's try to go around the room.
Okay, so in a nutshell, yes, and I only have a few more months on the board, but you can count on those few months. I'll be advocating for full-day kindergarten.
My question would be, how many parents both need to work in order to maintain the socioeconomic status that we keep talking about? I'm a working mom, I'm a single mom, and I don't want my child just to go to full-day kindergarten for the daycare. I also work for a school district, so I understand everything. Thank you so much for everything that both of you said, and I just want to applaud you and second it. Thank you. I just wanted to say that bottom line is I think that full-day kindergarten is the best for the children. There's like no two ways around it. I feel like I'm not sure if I agree with this research. I know that Pennsbury did not spend $3.29 million on staffing. They did some shifting. I don't think they made more bathrooms or any of that stuff. So I'm not sure if there's other ways to.
It's like 140 something per person, who makes so much money?
I'm just saying, I think there's a much cheaper way to do it than
There is?
this says right here.
Okay, any more?
I've paid for enrichment for both my older children, and I've seen the benefits of it. And it's not that they're in an environment where they're cramming necessarily more academic knowledge, but they have the additional time to play. And I hear parents, I have another one who's 2.5 and will benefit from this if it ever comes to fruition, but I've seen, we talk to parents about how, well, really, the Champions program, you know, it's in that school, it's in my home school of Welsh, which my daughter, who's now in 3rd grade, was one of the, she was like that in that inaugural year. We wake up at 3 in the morning to sign up, to try and get our kids in there so they have that benefit of being with the same kids all day long, not shuffling from school to school. You know, if I need to, I'll do that with my son in the future, but it's having the extra time that they can play and they can interact. And it really does. It totally benefits their children. And I know there's, you know, it's cost. It's all going to come down to, well, a lot of it's going to come down to money because that's what everybody's concerned about. But so many districts around us offer it. And I have friends who live in Lower Moreland and they can't believe you guys don't have full day. And, you know, we hope, we pray, but it would benefit the children. So.
Down the back wall.
I just I'd like to say that I'm not sure about this whole day daycare or kindergarten, but the fact of the matter is, when we get all the numbers together, I think it's going to be a very important part of this. And some of the questions I have, if the child goes to full day kindergarten versus half day, is that child at the age, at the end of 16 years of education, is that child truly going to be that far ahead of the child who did that? I never believed that to be a fact. I think we go along. No doubt it may be of some help. But the economic reality of it is the demographics of the world, of the developed nations, are still showing a decline in number of students. So if this means we have to spend a lot of money to go ahead and make rooms available, et cetera, what's going to happen when the facts are, the demographics come back and say, hey, we don't have the students. If you look at this paper that's here, it looks like we had 800 some people in the 6th grade, and there's only 700 or so in the 1st grade. Is that a science coming? I'm not making that statement. I'm not making that statement, but it's just something in any case it could happen.
Yep. Yeah. My name is Tom Daigle. I know some of you, we own and operate the Richboro Swim Club, so we're in the education business. Teach kids how to swim. They learn how to socialize in a free and open environment. We teach them water safety, but we don't have to catch them during the year. But, you know, the problem is I'm a business guy, okay? I see a school district that, I'm not going to say it's in decline, but the demand for its services is in decline because of the declining student population. I see a community where there are more people paying for the school district and not using the services. So you talk about a referendum, you put the vote out tomorrow, you say it's going to cost $5 million or whatever it is. 2/3 of the vote goes, and say, I ain't spending any money for that. Okay, so you have a certain number of people who use the school district. I don't know, maybe it's 30% and 70% of households don't. Now you're going to throw this expense on them for providing something that historically, when they want enrichment or more than half, they go someplace else. There's people in this room who have made investments in buildings and education programs, who have more users on their house to provide these facilities. And government's going to turn around and pull the rug out from under them for the public sector to provide this? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And that's my 2 cents.
Anything else down the back wall there?
Yes, I think the focus needs to be on the children's education, whether you do it now, whether you do it in 5 years, it's going to happen. I don't think it can be prevented. And the focus needs to be on the children. They're our future. They need education at these ages. You saw all of the factual information, the benefits of it. Whether or not you provide full day now or not, they're going for full day, whether they're paying for it. People want full day in the Council Rock School District because they're known to be the top educators in the area. They don't want to pay for their child to go to get a full day kindergarten at a kindergarten, which is better at providing daycare. They're not looking for daycare, they're looking for education.
Let's keep on, just going down the back wall. Finish up.
I'd be interested in letting him finish his thought about why he thinks.
We're going to get around to him. He's spoken a lot.
I'd like to, before I preface myself, I'd like to hear why he thinks.
We have anything else down there?
I just jumped the light. Let me first a public comment.
Okay.
I guess I'm going to be a dissenting voice. I've been a preschool teacher for a lot of years. And I don't support full-day kindergarten simply because Council Rock is in the business of education. And there's a great deal of research out there that just does not support that full-day kindergarten does much of anything. Yes, your kid has a wonderful time. Yes, your kid spends more time on reading or math, but they're 5. I mean, all of those things, the parents, I have 3 children of my own that I raised in Council Rock. They went to half day. There's just nothing to support in the research that these children benefit so greatly that we have to turn ourselves inside out to provide a full day. Now, I know there are parents in here who want it and disagree vehemently with me. That's fine, they're entitled to that. But they can also go someplace and get that full day if their child has to have it. But I don't know that our district and all the people who live in our district need to provide that just because, there are parents sitting there pounding their table saying, I want it. There's no proof, there's no research that really supports that just because you want it, that there's a long-term benefit to your child over the half-day kindergarten. So, I'll be the dissenting vote.
Thank you, Sarah. Unfortunately, I'm terribly sorry. It's 7:27 and our meeting starts at 7:30.
Will there be a
But I
kindergarten
encourage
committee? Are you going to have a kindergarten committee?
Hang on, for anybody that didn't get, we have public comment. For you have your opportunity. We'll hear. Feel free to stick around. We'd love you to stick around for the meeting, and we'll have the opportunity to talk at the beginning and the end.
In terms of, we're having a